Welcome to our ongoing class regarding the 7 commandments, the 7 universal Noahide commandments. Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, for all of mankind, for b'nei Noach. We are now in the middle of studying from the Talmudic Encyclopedia, which is called Encyclopedia Talmudit, Volume 3. We are currently on page Shin Nun Hey, 355, and we are up to the 7th of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and that is dinim, to set up a judicial court system. As a reminder for those that have been following our various different classes, what we spent some time doing was in the Chumash called Torah Shlema, written by Rabbi Mendel Kasher. So he has an essay with regards to this mitzvah of dinim, the commandment of setting up a court system. Basically, that there are 2 ways to look at it, and which seems to be the more correct, the more accurate way. And we went through that, and I'm not going to repeat it now. But now we're going to see what the Talmudic Encyclopedia, which is, as we mentioned in our opening class to this section, primarily compiled by Rabbi Zevin, and they bring down over here in an encyclopedic format all the information, and on the bottom of the page, of course, we have all of the references and sources. So we're on the right-hand column, in the middle of the column, paragraph beginning Bedinim, when it comes to laws. Kishem sheYisrael, just as the Jewish people, mitzuvim, are commanded, lahoishiv, to establish, to place, batei dinim, courts, ba'ayares shalahem, in their cities. This is actually an outright commandment. It's a mitzvah, and you can find that in the beginning of the Torah portion of Shoftim in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, and Shoftim means judges, and the commandment is Shoftim v'shoitrim titan l'chal b'chol sharecha, that judges and law enforcing officers you shall place in all of your gates, in all your cities. So just as the Jewish people are commanded to place courts in all of their cities, kach, so too, b'nei Noach mitzuvim, b'nei Noach are likewise commanded, ba'yares shalahem, in their cities. Hainu, meaning, b'chol pelech v'felech, in every single county, u'v'chol ir va'ir, and in every single city. And presumably this is outside of the land of Israel, because in the land of Israel, those are the Jewish cities. And that's the obligation, and that is the mitzvah for the Jews, to place and establish courts in every city in the Holy Land of Israel. We're talking about outside of Israel. Whatever country you live in, the Bnei Noach there are obligated to establish a court system in every single city, county. V'nechleku Rishonim. Now there's a dispute amongst the Rishonim, the early commentaries and codifiers. Yesh oimrim, there are those that say, shal hadayonim, that what is required of the judges, ladun, to judge, es b'nei Noach, the Noachites, the non-Jews, b'sheish mitzvahs shalahem, about their 6 mitzvahs. That's what they're supposed to be judging them with regards to the adherence to the above mentioned 6. So mitzvah number 7 is to enforce and judge and rule with regards to the first 6. Ulahazhir es ha'am, and to warn the people, v'af, and also, or even, ha'oiver al hamitzvah hashviyis, one who transgresses this 7th zoi, this 7th commandment, mitzvah stayonim, the mitzvah of establishing courts with judges, chayav is liable, v'neherag, and is put to death. So even though the 7th one is different and unique, in the sense that it is based on the other 6. The whole point is to uphold the first 6. Nonetheless, if they fail to do this commandment and to establish courts to uphold the first 6, they're also to be put to death. V'chol shira'u be'echad. And in any time, any case where they see an individual, she'avar, that transgressed on one of the 6, v'lo danuhu, and they did not judge him, neherag, so then that individual that saw someone transgress and didn't judge him is to be put to death. Now obviously there's a lot to be discussed about that, and that sure seems to open up a whole venue of discussion, and I don't want to get into it yet. Let's see what he says further, but just to mention that what happens if a person lives in a city and he's only one of, let's say, 1 million people, and the court system fails to do what it's supposed to do, so the innocent bystander, or is every individual in that city held accountable and responsible? Like, how does that work? But what he said so far, this sentence reads that anyone who saw an individual transgress and didn't judge him is to be put to death. And for this very reason, nischayvu were liable, kol baalei Shechem hariga, all the members of the city of Shechem to be put to death. So again, just a quick reminder of what happened over there for those that may not remember their Bible stories clearly. This is a story that happens back in the book of Bereshis and Genesis, when Yaakov, Jacob, arrives with his family, and they settle in a city called Shechem. And over there, Yaakov's young daughter, Dinah, was kidnapped, which is a capital offense for Bnei Noach to do, and she was raped. And this was actually by the prince, the son of the head, the son of the king of the city. And the whole story goes on of how the two of the sons of Yaakov, two of Dinah's brothers, Shimon and Levi, shrieked the whole city, and they basically were able to kill them all out. So they killed out the entire city. So the question is, what kind of justice is that? What was going on over there? So the explanation given is that actually the entire city, not just the individual who committed the crime, they were all liable and obligated to be put to death. What crime did they do? They are members of a city that did not fulfill their obligation of justice, of this 7th mitzvah called dinim, of having a proper court system where they would take the individual who committed such a crime of kidnapping and raping, and they should have put him to death. In failing to judge him and do that, they themselves, they meaning the entire city. So that's what we're saying. Sheharei, for behold, we're in the right-hand column, about 10 lines up from the bottom. First word on the line, Shechem.
Thank you.
For behold, Shechem gozal. Shechem stole, or in our terms that would be called kidnapping, or robbed. V'heim ra'u, they saw, v'yadu, and they knew. So this whole event was public. It wasn't like, there's some individual who walked into a store and he pocketed, something which wasn't his and walked right out. We don't say in such a case that we expect all the people of the city, to either kill him or they're put to death. This was a public event. It became well known. And they did not judge him. He was not put up to be judged, and that's the case. And this is the source they bring in 249 at the bottom is the Rambam and the Meiri, okay, two of the Rishonim. V'afalpi, and although shezeu bitul mitzvahs asay, although failing to judge him is a transgression of a positive commandment, the first 6 are all negative. This one, dinim, at least for now, we're stating that it's a positive commandment. All the other ones, no idolatry, no adultery, no blasphemy, no murder, no stealing, no eating a limb off of a live animal. They're all no's. So technically the way you fulfill the first 6 is by being passive. Stay home and just be a couch potato and don't say anything inappropriate. You are fulfilling those 6 commandments. The 7th one is an active one called mitzvahs asay, a positive commandment, to actively have a court system to judge people that transgress. So even though the transgression here was of a positive commandment, yet Ben Noach nerag afal bitul asay. A Ben Noach is put to death for transgressing the positive commandment. Now the reason why they need to stress that over here in this article is because we don't find that in the Torah law of the 613 biblical commandments for the Yisrael, for the Jew, that there's the death penalty for transgressing a positive commandment. All the death penalties in Jewish law for the Jew are all negatives, are some of the 365 prohibitions in the negative. So that's why they need to stress over here that when it comes to a Ben Noach, even for their one positive commandment, they too are to be put to death for transgressing.
It's pretty interesting that it's Dina is her name.
Yeah, it's very good. That's right. Good point. Dina, which is the same root as dinim, which means judgment. So they actually transgressed the mitzvah of dinim with regards to the story of Dinah. Very good point. No coincidence. Or alternatively, lefi sheyesh bedinim av sheval taseh. Now they're suggesting that why would they be obligated to be put to death for transgressing this positive commandment? So we just said the first thing was because Bnei Noach are also obligated, they're also liable. It's a capital offense to transgress this positive commandment. Now they're saying, no, you don't have to resort to that. We can alternatively explain that within this mitzvah, within this commandment of dinim, which is a positive one, there is also the negative. There is the concept of shev v'al taseh, of sit and don't do, be passive. Hainu meaning, kum v'aseh, get up and act and do, that's the positive. Mishpat, judgment. Ve'al taseh avel, and don't do what do you call, not corruption, there's a better word, when something is twisted. When the judgment is incorrect, it is inappropriate, it's twisted.
Pervert?
Pervert, yeah, I think that might be the word. And do not pervert justice. So therefore, there is the positive and the negative, because in this commandment, it says, yes, positively, get up, establish a court system, appoint judges, and judge people. But within that itself, it says, and do not pervert justice. So there you have it. So it's also a negative.
Where do we find do not pervert justice?
So the reference in 251, it says, take a look in Sanhedrin 59a and in Rashi. So that would be the reference. They're saying, take a look. which means that there would be discussion or may not be absolutely clear outright. But that's where they're telling us where they're getting this from. That would be in Sanhedrin 59a and in Rashi.
That'd be Rashi on 59.
Yes, Rashi right there. Right at the top of the page. All right, this is coming where the Gemara is discussing why 7, how do you get 7, and there's a whole bunch more. So it's saying, no, when we say 7, we're only counting the passive negative ones. So then the Talmud, the Gemara asks, well, what about dinim? That's one of the 7, and that's and that is a positive one. It's kumasei. It's be active, get up and actively judge. So the Gemara answers that it's counting a mitzvah, which yes, it's kumasei, it's get up and do it actively, and it is sheiv val taseh, sit, and so it's both. If a mitzvah is both, it'll count it. And there Rashi explains, Rashi is the primary commentary on the entire Tanakh as well as on the entire Talmud. So Rashi says as follows: Hu masei mishpat, positively get up and do justice, sheiv al taseh, and sit and be passive and don't do avel, perversion. Afilu einay mitzvah lasa is mishpat, even if there isn't a commandment to do justice, v'yoyishevu batel, and the person just sitting there doing nothing, muzar, who he's still commanded, he's forewarned, shaloi lasa avel, not to do injustice. V'azhares leisasu avel eina kumasei mishpat. And when the Torah states in Vayikra, in Leviticus 19, lo yisasu avel, talking to the Jews, don't do perversion in injustice, that is not a kumasei judgment. El lechuda, separate. Shave, sit passively. V'habatel milo yisaseh avel. So if someone transgresses this negative commandment of not to pervert the justice, is transgressing. Okay, so this mitzvah, the way Rashi is explaining the answer of the Gemara, he's elaborating and explaining it, is actually both. So since doing justice has in it also the negative element in it, meaning that we're quoting the verse which is speaking to the Jews, but it's telling us how to have a justice court system. So it says, and don't be unjust. So that would be the negative element and aspect of it. So we have alternatively two explanations as to why Bnei Noach are still, why is it a capital offense to fail in judging for the first 6. One is that this whole idea of not having the death penalty for a positive commandment is only a rule that applies to Jews. But Bnei Noach, that does not apply. And therefore, dinim, which is a positive one, they still have the death penalty. Or alternatively, it's only because dinim also has in it the negative, and that is do not misjudge or judge inappropriately.
But if the city doesn't judge at all, then
That is a transgression of both the positive and the negative,
how would it be a transgression of the negative?
because they're supposed to be passive, and by not judging, that's a perversion of justice. It's not just if they make the guilty man innocent and the innocent man guilty that's a perversion of justice. If they fail to judge a criminal, that means that they are perverting the justice. V'azharas hadinim, and the warning of this dinim of judgment. So what exactly is the commandment here? What are the Bnei Noach commanded? That is to refrain and to withhold the wrongdoing and any type of criminal acts. Criminal meaning transgressing the first six. Interesting way of putting it. This is a quote from the Meiri. Anyone who is a reason for a criminal act is considered the actor himself. Is considered the one who did it. If someone is a reason for an inappropriate act or a criminal act, that person is considered the doer. Which means to say that if there isn't a proper judicial system, and therefore people do the other six sins, and they can get away with it because there is no court system down here that's going to judge them. So there is no accountability here, and there's no punishment. So those people that are not punishing, that are living in such a system, are in essence, they are the cause, and more so, they're actually the ones that are committing the crime as well. So it sounds like it's even more than an accomplice. L'dei azoi, according to this opinion that we just mentioned, remember we said there's a dispute. This was all one opinion of those Rishonim that say that this mitzvah of dinim is to see to it to uphold and the first six. According to this opinion, kol dinei mamonos, all monetary or civil laws, shebein adam lachaveroi, which is between man and his fellow man, kigneva, such as stealing, v'oina, or cheating in any way financially, v'chayetze v'hen, or anything of the like. Nichlalim are incorporated, livnei noach, for the Bnei Noach, bichlal gezel. They would all be included in the mitzvah of not stealing. So any type of inappropriate financial dealings between buyer and seller, employer-employee, renter-rentee, someone who's hired to be a guard and watch someone else's property, whatever the legal term, whatever the legal case may be, any type of inappropriate financial behavior falls into the category of stealing, of gezel. And the source for that is in 253 is the Chassam Sofer. Chassam Sofer is not a Rishon. He lived relatively recently, only about 200 or so years ago. So they reference where in his responsa he discusses this. And actually, we're going to have to see that inside someday. So let's just make a note of that. The Chassam Sofer in section 6, 14. The Yesh Oimri. And then there are those that say, this is the second opinion of what the mitzvah of dinim is for Bnei Noach. Until now was one explanation. And some say, other Rishonim, Shemitzvahs were on the top of the left-hand column on Shin Nun Hey, 355. Shemitzvahs Hoishavas Dayonim, that the mitzvah of placing judges, Eina is not Ela Chelek Echad Mi Mitzvahs Dinim. It is merely, it's only one part of this mitzvah of dinim. Vehu, and that is Hakum Va'asei Sheba. This is the active part, the positive aspect of the mitzvah of dinim. V'lo nerag olav ben Noach k'she'enoi mekaimoi. And a ben Noach is not put to death when he fails to fulfill this mitzvah. According to this opinion, if Bnei Noach do not establish a court system, if they don't judge a transgressor, they are not to be put to death for that. Shelo Yomru, for it has not been stated, the Talmud does not say, Ella, rather, what does it say? Azharasam zay mishasam. That their warning, that's their death. Referring as follows. We have a rule. When it comes to Torah for the Jewish people, when it comes to the 613 commandments, in order for a Jew to receive the death penalty, we have to find that the Torah first warns him. There has to be a statement of warning and then a statement of punishment. It's generally insufficient to just say that for this sin, one is to be put to death. There has to be a warning, and then there is the punishment. However, with regards to Bnei Noach, we don't say that. We say their warning, that is the death penalty. It has to be self-understood, and it's automatic. That if there's a warning, if there is a prohibition for a Ben Noach to do a certain act, that itself is to automatically be understood as a capital offense. Okay? So when was that said? Only when it's azharasam, which means warning someone not to transgress a negative commandment. When it says don't, that's the definition of azhara, of a warning. V'lo tikare azhara, you don't refer to something as an azhara, as a warning, ela hameniya milav, only to refrain from a negative commandment, from a lav, which means don't in Aramaic, from a loisase, from a don't do. Like for the Jews, that's 365 negative commandments. So that's where you give azhara, a warning. For example, for the Jew, in order for him to actually be put to death by the Jewish court, by the Sanhedrin, one of the things necessary is a proper azhara warning, where they tell him that what you're about to do right now is a sin, and or you'll be put to death for that. Whatever the case is, where the person is about to transgress Shabbos. So they warn him and they say, today's Shabbos, this is forbidden, it's an offense, and if you do that, that is a capital offense. So that can only be done by a negative commandment. If someone's about to transgress a positive commandment, that's not called azhara. There's no such thing as warning over there. So therefore, if dinim is a positive commandment, so it can't be a capital offense. Ella, rather, shnitztavu b'nei Noach, b'nei Noach were commanded, af b'dinim, when it comes to dinim as well, ki oisam shnitztavu Yisrael, just like the Jewish people are commanded. That's what dinim means. Kidine, gneva, such as the laws of stealing, ugezela and robbing, v'oina and financial cheating, v'oishek schar sachir and withholding wages, v'dine hashoimrim, and the laws of the various different security. What would you call someone who's holding someone else's property? Someone deposited the property with them to watch. A watchman of some sort. Is there a legal term for that in English? If I give you something of mine to watch, so I'll be back in 30 days. Please keep an eye on this. There's a few types. One is I'll pay you for it, so I'm going to pay you $1 a day to keep an eye on my whatever. Or I ask you, will you take responsibility and watch it, and as a favor, and I'm not going to pay you, and you say yes. In either case, there's some liability.
Yeah, I don't know the technical term.
Okay, but that's a shomer, a guard. The oines, and one who commits rape, umefate, or seduction, v'ovis nezikin, and then the general 4 types of damages of making a pit or anything which is dangerous in a public place, or starting a fire and having it spread, or a person's animal going in and eating from someone else's property, or an animal that damages in a malicious way. V'choivel b'chaveiroi, or if someone hits someone else. V'dine malve v'loive, and the laws of borrower, lender and borrower. V'dine mekach u'memker, and laws of buyer and seller. V'chayetze v'ohem, and all sorts of other such related things. Everything dealing with some financial interaction. Because don't forget, according to the Torah, rape is also a financial, besides the terrible crime that it is, there's also a financial payment. The Torah says clearly how much the person has to pay. So all of these things are basically financial. V'chol ish mehem, and any person who transgressed any of the above examples plus, shegonav v'oshak v'chulei, that he stole, or he withheld payment from, withheld wages, etc. Hu shavar mitzvahs dinim, so this person transgressed the mitzvah of dinim, shel sheival taseh, of be passive and don't. V'nerag, and is put to death. So in other words, according to this, see, in the previous opinion, we stressed that the prohibition of a person not giving wages when he owes it to someone, that is under the category of geneva, of gezel, which is one of the 7 mitzvahs Ben Noach. Now we're suggesting that no, if it isn't outright gezel, anything else which is related to being unfair and cheating someone else financially is actually the prohibition of dinim. So that's why it would be a death penalty dinim, because it's still the negative. It's sheival taseh. It's being passive. So it comes out that there is no death penalty for dinim, because dinim is a positive commandment, but there is a death penalty for all of these other things because they are negatives, and technically they are dinim. So there is a death penalty for dinim, but not for failing in setting up the court system to judge people, but rather any time a person transgresses any financial issue, it's not under the category of gazel, of robbery, but it falls under the category of dinim, of judging. Okay, the source this is the Ramban in his commentary to the Torah. That's how the Ramban explains it. Can you pass me that, please? The Bereshis. Yes. Thank
Ramban?
Ramban, Nachmanides. And this is the story of Dinah and Shechem, where he's also dealing with why were they all, to be put to death. So he brings down the Rambam. The Ramban quotes the Rambam, where the Rambam in the Laws of Kings explains that they were transgressing dinim, the entire community of Shechem, and therefore they are to be put to death. And he actually says, therefore, if one Ben Noach sees someone else transgressing any one of the 6, and he does not judge him, then that person needs to be put to death. And therefore everybody in Shechem had to be put to death, for Shechem stole, and they saw and knew and didn't judge him. Didn't judge him. That's the Rambam. The Ramban disagrees with that whole approach. After he quotes the entire Rambam, then the Ramban says, and these things are not correct in my eyes. Because if so, why did Yaakov Avinu not order to do that? Why was it against his will?
I feel like we went through this in the Rebbe.
See, the Ramban says like this. If, in fact, they are obligated to be put to death, so why wouldn't Yaakov himself be the one to jump and do this great mitzvah? Because it was not. And if you're going to say that, well, he was afraid, he didn't think he can get away with it, All right, but at least, why was he angry with his two sons who did the right thing and succeeded?
Yeah, you wouldn't be angry, you'd be sheepish or something.
Or he could even be happy that they succeeded. They did what he was afraid to do.
Oh,
the right thing.
Right, yeah, good point.
Then the Ramban says, and therefore, my opinion is, dinim that we speak about for Bnei Noach in their 7 mitzvahs is not merely to place judges in every city or every county, but rather dinim means not just to have a court system. Dinim means civil laws. That's the mitzvah of dinim. Just like the Jewish people were commanded. So this sort of is really the discussion that we had in the Torah Shlema from Rabbi Kasher. And according to the Ramban, it surely seems like whatever civil laws are for the Jews, that's the laws that they should follow. I mean, you can really get into it and say, well, maybe they can make their own laws. Fine. So either make your own laws, which you feel is appropriate according to the time and according to the country you live in, and they don't have to be the same from country to country or even from time to time. Fine. Or you can arguably say, why don't you just take a look in the Parsha of Mishpatim in the book of Shemais of Exodus and just follow all the civil laws for the Jews. Be that as it may, either one of those two approaches, the point is that dinim means have civil laws. Not merely set up a court system that's going to judge the first 6. But no, dinim means make laws. And therefore, if they fail in establishing a court system in every single city, just like the Jews have to do, Bnei Noach have to do, if they fail in that they don't do it, that is not a capital offense. You don't kill out a city because they don't have judges. Because they don't have a court. Because that's a positive commandment. Yeah, perhaps we should actually go through this entire Ramban sooner than later. But I think we should maybe...
Is that 34:16 or...
34:13.
13?
Yeah. It's Ambratius chapter 34, verse 13.
Just a Rambam and Shem.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
So maybe for next class, actually make copies of that, and we'll do that one. Okay? See it inside. But basically, this is what they're doing. They're paraphrasing what the Ramban says there. So this is the second opinion of what dini means. So again, the first opinion, which is the Rambam, and that is dini means to set up a court system to judge for the first 6. And the Ramban says, no, besides that may be part of it. But in addition to that, it means to make laws, civil laws. Okay. V'chein, we're about 12 lines down. V'chein hu ne'erag, and likewise the Ben Noach is to be put to death, aloi saseh sheyesh badayonim, on the negative commandment that there is when it comes to dayonim, to judges. Going, for example, hatoyas hadin, if he misjudges, or if he takes a bribe. So a judge that accepts a bribe, that's already a capital offense. Why? Because it's not that they're transgressing a positive commandment. They're transgressing a negative commandment. They're doing something wrong, like all the other 6. So again, in the mitzvah of dinim, even if you're going to say that it is primarily a positive commandment, unlike the first 6, but it still has within it negative parts, like the first 6. For example, that he can't judge inappropriately, can't pervert to justice, or he can't accept a bribe. Aval, however, Rashoi Hagoi, the non-Jew is permitted, loimar, to say, leva'alei hadin, to the litigants, eini nizkak lochem, I don't want to deal with you fellas. The potential plaintiff and defendant appear before someone. So the non-Jew is allowed to say, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to judge the case. V'kol shekain, and how much more so, shelo yehareg, that he will not be put to death, kishelo yasa atzmoi, when he doesn't make himself katzin, oy shoiter, lishbet asacherim. He doesn't make himself a law enforcing officer or a policeman to judge others. Because the reading of Shechem, that story, it sounds like any individual that sees anybody transgressing any of the six and doesn't decide, hey, I'm the judge, or what do you call that in America today? Not that, but as far as police, citizen's arrest. So there's a concept of a citizen's arrest, right? Citizen's arrest. You're a citizen.
They do have a sort of court system because they have this town hall meeting.
Where? The citizens?
In Shechem.
Well, they failed in judging, but let's say like this.
Right, but they had some kind of system in place.
Okay. And you're saying that's why they were all liable to put to death, because they failed in judging?
Possibly.
But if they wouldn't have had any system, you're saying that would have been better?
I don't know.
Well, we're saying like this. If you
What
have,
I'm saying is that it seems like there's a system of some type.
which failed to judge the judge. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because you're saying they had a meeting, they called all the people together, and I mean, he was, after all, the king or whatever he was, so that means that there's some kind of structured
Maybe they had a
hierarchy.
meeting, but not a base then, like they didn't actually judge the case. Maybe they just got together and say, we're not going to judge the case.
Any case.
Yeah.
So what are they? They
Well,
just
even being the king, whatever that means in that town,
yeah.
he needed to get the other people of the town on board with
Yeah.
this circumcision thing. So it wasn't as if he wasn't as if he's a dictator.
The Torah refers to him as Nasi Haaretz, the I don't know, the
Prince of the land.
Prince of the land. So, what he's saying now is that this is the Ramban, that no individual is obligated to play the role of judge. Now, it's not like you're walking down the street and you see someone who is transgressing one of the six, so pull out your sword and behead him. So no one has that obligation to do that. You don't have to make yourself the judge. That's not what the mitzvah of dinim is. Yesh oimrim, some say, shebichlal mitzvahs dinim, that included in this commandment of dinim, he af zoi, it's also this, shemechuyav leilech al hadayan, that an individual is obligated to go to the judge, lifsoi kloi din, to rule for him the judgment, ulakabel olav es dino, and to accept his ruling, kishiyesh lo dinim chavere, when he has a dispute with a friend. And he is forbidden to judge for himself. He can't say, I know the law, and I know that I'm right, therefore, no. Anytime two people have a disagreement about any type of monetary law, two neighbors, an employer, an employee, a borrower, and a lender, any type of interaction that there is when two people disagree, so some say, you know what the mitzvah of dinim is for that individual? Go to the judge. You have to go to the judge, and you cannot judge for yourself. See, many of these things we're stating because for the Jews they're different. So also, for example, by the Jews, there's a concept of a person who knows the law, that he is allowed to judge for himself. He doesn't have to go to a beis din. He can say, no, I know that you owe me the money, and therefore I can take it. It's my money. Whereas we're saying for Bnei Noach it doesn't apply. The mitzvah of dinim for them is, Even though Jews have the mitzvah of appointing judges in every single city and every single county, but that doesn't mean that for every single dispute I have to go to the judge. There has to be a judge in place for the cases that we need to go to him for. And some say that when it comes to Bnei Noach, any time there's a dispute, even if you know the law, you are obligated to sue him or to go along to court or whatever it may be. And he brings on in 257 that according to the, well, you see, this approach, this Yesh Oimrim, is a She'il Tois, which is a very early source. And on the She'il Tois, there is a commentary called Ha'amek Sha'ila, which was written by someone who came much, much later, by the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who lived a couple hundred years ago. And he explains it, that this is what the Gemara in Sanhedrin 59a means when it says that dinim also has in it sheval taseh, to be passive. That's how they transgress. Meaning that you have to go to the judge to judge every case. And if you don't, then you're transgressing. So it's also a passive commandment, just like the other six. Because otherwise, establishing a court system is a positive one. All right. Now, this next paragraph is, in fact, going to be pretty much the topic that we learned in the supplements to the Torah Shlema from Rabbi Kasher on Parshas Mishpatim. I'm just wondering if in the footnotes here they bring him down at all. And the question is, which came first? Did his... it's possible that this came first, so they don't bring him down. Because this was first printed around 1951, what we're doing now. And the first printing of that volume of the Torah Shlema, do you remember what year that was? Might have been a little bit later.
The Torah Shlema, what did you say?
When was that volume printed, the one that we did? Mishpatim.
I thought it was after he went to Israel.
Okay, well,
So I think it was like in the early 50s.
Wow, so it's around the same time.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so that is interesting. Because I don't see that they really bring him down, and they would. Okay, so that was a very long article, if you remember. And here, they're presenting it as everything, one paragraph. Bedinim, when it comes to laws, shebein adam lachaveiroi, between one man and his fellow man, civil. Donu Acharonim, so the Acharonim, which is the later codifiers of the just past couple hundred years, they are discussing im nitztavu, whether Bnei Noach were commanded, al kol protei hadinim, of all the details of dinim. Do they have a whole set of civil laws in detail? Ki mishpatei ha-Torah li-Yisrael, like the civil laws of the Torah for the Jewish people, which the Jewish people have detailed laws. So does the same apply to Bnei Noach? Do they also have detailed laws? Oy, or she'ein lahem protei dinim, they don't have detailed laws, civil laws. Ella rather, Mechuyavim, they are obligated, they're required, lishpoit, to judge, bechukim nimusiyim, if you remember that word. They have to judge with laws that are manners or common sense. Lefi mishpat yosher shalahem, according to the upright, just laws of theirs. Just have to have a justice, righteousness, whatever is morally correct. But they weren't told and given instructions. The Tolu Adavar, so now they say that this dispute as to whether we look at it this way or that way is dependent. It actually goes back to a Talmudic dispute. Im lemeidim dinim libnei Noach. Do we learn out dinim for bnei Noach mi vayetzav or mi Elokim? I don't know if you recall all this, but all this was brought down by Rabbi Kasher.
Right.
There's the verse where Hashem commands Adam, that one key verse, where it says, and Elokim commanded man about in the Garden of Eden about not eating from the tree of knowledge. So we take every word over there and we say this means this. That's how we get the 7 mitzvahs. So then there was a dispute in the Gemara. Do we learn out dinim from Vayetzav, which means he commanded him? Or do we learn it from the word Elokim, which we said Elokim is not just one of God's names, but Elokim actually means judges. Like we find in a couple places later on in the Chumash, in Parshas Mishpatim, that it says if two people have a dispute about a certain case, they should come to the Elokim, and that has nothing to do with coming to a religious body. It doesn't mean come to Hashem, it doesn't mean come to synagogue, it doesn't mean go pray, it doesn't mean ask Hashem to judge you. It strictly means judges. So a word for judges in the Torah is Elokim. So even though the verse in Bereshis with Adam, it means Hashem, it means God, but we're learning out from the fact that he uses the word Elokim that that's hinted. Okay, so the question is it Vayetzav, and he commanded, that teaches us dinim, or is it Elokim that teaches us dinim? Sheim lemeidim mi Vayetzav, for if we derive the mitzvah of dinim, of a court system, from the word Vayetzav, and he commanded, Shehirasoi, so what is this directive? Al dinim, that word Vayetzav is directing us that there is a mitzvah of dinim. Lomadnu me'apasuk, we learn out from the verse, Ki yadativ, that I know him, Hashem says about Avraham, Leman, Asher, Yitzav ve'goymer, for he will command his children after him to go in these proper ways. That's what Hashem describes about Avraham. In that case, Ein elu mishpatei HaTorah l'chukim nimusiyim. So then it doesn't mean Torah law, but rather common sense, proper laws, whatever the people decide on. That's if we learn it out from Vayetzav, because how do we learn? What does Vayetzav teach me about dinim? So we said we juxtapose that to the word Yitzaveh in the other verse by Avraham. V'im lemeidim Elokim. However, if we learn it out, like the other opinion in the Talmud, from the word Elokim, v'hainu, so then what's the juxtaposition? What are we comparing this word Elokim to? Me'apasuk, to the verse in Mishpatim, v'nikrav balabayis el ha'Elokim, that it says, and the owner should approach the judges. Harisham medubar b'dinei haTorah. There, it's post Matan Torah, post the giving of the Torah. And there it's talking about a Torah law. So you're teaching me that Bnei Noach are obligated in dinim from the word Elokim. And the word Elokim you're telling me means dinim from a verse which is after the giving of the Torah, speaking to the Jewish people about a very particular monetary case for the Jews. That means to say that the Bnei Noach have to keep all the monetary laws that the Jews have to keep. And the civil laws for the Ben Noach and for the Jew are essentially identical. And that's what dinim means. And therefore the Bnei Noach are commanded to judge according to Torah law. Which, just to illustrate it, or to bring it out in so to say, well, theoretically practical terms, if that makes any sense. And that is as follows. Your best judge for dinim, for Bnei Noach, would probably be an expert, professional, Jewish dayan, a Jewish judge. Some old rabbi with a long white beard who judges such cases day in and day out. That's what he's doing. Two Jews keep coming to him with a dispute. He's constantly dealing with all these business cases. Buyer and seller, tenant and landlord, borrower and lender, etc. So he's dealing with Torah law. So now if there's two non-Jews that have a dispute, who should they go to? Go to someone who went to Harvard? Go to someone who went to Yale? You go to someone who really knows the section of the Shulchan Aruch called the Choshen Mishpat. And he's the best judge for the Bnei Noach, according to this approach. Because it's supposed to be identical. It's based on Parshas Mishpatim in the Chumash. So he would be the best judge. Now, I'm not saying that you actually have to go to a Jewish judge, but the non-Jewish judges should actually be learning Choshen Mishpat, which totally parenthetically, this is a completely parenthetical statement I'm going to make now, basically nothing to do with this, a different, if you will, sensitive topic or discussion is Torah study for the non-Jew. So we know that officially a non-Jew is not allowed to be Osek in Torah, which loosely translated, non-Jews can't learn Torah. And then one can ask, so what's this class all about, or what are we doing, what are we promoting? So the simple answer, of course, well, we're talking about Shavah Mrs. Bnei Noach. So I said, okay, well, that should be probably like 7 classes. Give me 7 hours worth, and then that's it. What are you guys doing? So according to this approach of dinim, the judges, and not only the judges, but if I'm supposed to be able to keep the law, sure, I don't have to be a lawyer or a judge, and I don't have to study all those law books, but I do need to know basically the laws. This, according to this, it would certainly allow, if not to encourage, non-Jews to learn the entire Choshen Mishpat section of the Shulchan Aruch. That's a lot. And off the record, nowadays, most Jews don't know that. Don't know the Choshen Mishpat. Most Jews are not well versed in the Choshen Mishpat. It would be great if go through the entire Shulchan Aruch. There's 4 sections to the Jewish Code of Law, the Shulchan Aruch, and the Choshen Mishpat is monetary laws. So in order to be a Jewish judge of a Beis Din, one doesn't, like today, there's basically two levels in rabbinic ordination called Smichas Chachamim, or Smicha. The first one is when the person was tested on laws of the section called Oira Chaim, which that's the daily halachas, such as prayer and Shabbos and Jewish festivals and things related to that. And then there's a section called Yeredeya, which deals with laws of kashrus, of kosher meat and salting the meat and slaughtering those things. Those are basically the sections that are necessary for a person to get rabbinic ordination. But then there's the higher level, the second level, that many get, and that is called, for that they have to be tested primarily on sections of Choshen Mishpat. And that deals with monetary laws. And that person would then be able to judge monetary cases. The first person can't really judge disputes between two people, but rather can tell a person about laws of keeping Shabbos and things related. So, a Ben Noach, according to this approach, could, at least could, and arguably would be very much encouraged and should, study Choshen Mishpat. Now, if we were to do that, we would have literally hundreds of hours of classes, but literally, it would be hundreds of hours of classes of studying the Choshen Mishpat. But for sure, a judge, Dayanim of the non-Jews, They would for sure have to study the Choshen Mishpat. How else can they judge? V'yesh cholkim, and then there are those that argue. V'soifrim, and they hold. Sheladivrei ha'akol, that everybody holds. Eina mitzuvim al protei adinim k'fi ha'Torah. Some say that no, it doesn't. Both previous mentioned opinions, everybody agrees that the Bnei Noach are not commanded in all the details of the civil laws as they appear in the Torah for the Jews. Ella, rather, lahamid shoftim sheyadunu lefi chukeihem, but rather to establish judges that should judge according to their laws. So whether you learn out from Vayetzav or whether you learn out from Elikim, according to this opinion, doesn't matter. Doesn't make a difference. The mitzvah of dinim is appoint judges to judge according to their laws, which then would mean that the judges have to know the civil laws of that country, which are not necessarily at all the same as Torah laws for the Jews, and therefore the judges have no business studying Choshen Mishpat, but they should be studying their law books, whatever they teach in Cambridge, in Yale, Harvard, wherever. And that source for that last opinion is in 262 is again this Hayemek Shaila on the Shiltos, that would be the Netziv. All right, last two lines on page Shin Nun Hey. Kosvu Rishonim. From the early commentaries, codifiers, they have written, Shemitzuvim af al hapshara. The Bnei Noach are also commanded in making arbitration or compromise. See, when it comes to Jews, to Yisrael, and to judgment, so there's a whole discussion. And the conclusion, the ruling is that Jews are supposed to try to first make pshara. And therefore, the common practice, when two Jews have a dispute, and they come before the Jewish Beis Din, the Jewish court, on financial matters, inevitably, they will almost always try to find some type of compromise. You're supposed to start off that way. Now, it's possible that one or both parties are very stubborn, and they don't want that. That's fine. And then they will ultimately judge them throw the book at them, and they'll go by the letter of the law. That's fine. But they're supposed to first go and try to make a compromise. That's the best type of a Beis Din if it's able to make a compromise when it's possible. So the question is, what about for non-Jews when it comes to dinim? Should their law system, their court system, try to do the same, or is that a special rule for Jews? And there's no concept of pshara, of arbitration or compromise for the non-Jews. So there are those that write that they are commanded in pshara as well. Shenemar, for the verse states, and again this is going back to Avraham Avinu, where we learned out Elikim. So it's Yitzaveh, he will command. So that was the verse that said he will command his descendants. Laseis tzedakah umishpat, to do tzedakah and mishpat, righteousness and justice. Umisham lamadnu, and from there we learn dinim livnei Noach. As we said, according to one opinion in the Talmud, that verse is the source. It's the juxtaposition to the word Vayetzav in the original commandment to Adam. So from there we learn out dinim. So in that case, that pasuk says tzedakah and mishpat. Utzedakah zuhi pshara. And according to the interpretation of the Talmud, tzedakah means compromise. So that would be one opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah?
my glasses. kind of broken.
Okay.
Sorry.
Al dine knossos lo yehuzharu. When it comes to laws of fines, in the Torah we find that the Torah fines people. So fines, as opposed to actual monetary payment for loss of property or whatever, fines they're not commanded about. Because the verse states two words, tzedakah and mishpat. Uknosos einay mishpat. And a fine is not mishpat. A fine is not a justice. To give someone a fine, that means you're charging him more than he's obligated. The guy stole, so we say, as a penalty, you have to pay 200%.
Oh, it's not a restitution. It's a
Right, exactly. Not a restitution, but it's a fine. It's a punishment. So some say that whole thing does not apply to Bnei Noach, and there's no such thing. Because in Torah law, at times, an individual might pay 5 times the amount of what he stole. No. Here it's just a matter of reimbursement. It's 100%. Bas Noach. A female. Eina mitzuva al mitzvahs dinim. She is not commanded in this mitzvah of dinim. The first 6 apply to men and women equally. This mitzvah of appointing judges and having a court system does not apply to the women. And a woman cannot be a judge. Shenemar, as the verse states, Ach estimchem v'goymer miyad ish v'lei miyad isha. When the Torah is teaching us about the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, so it says, I will demand, and it uses the words miyad ish from the hands of man to exclude woman. Hashem is speaking to Noach, and he's speaking about various prohibitions of the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. He's speaking about Eiver Min Achai, where he introduces the one new commandment which didn't apply to Adam, according to most opinions, and that is not eating from a live animal. And then it says that I will demand. Then it speaks about the prohibition of murder. And anyhow, when it speaks about I will demand, it says miyad ish, from the hands of a man. From there we learn out that who's obligated to patrol or to make sure that nobody eats a limb off of a live animal, or that nobody murders, or that nobody transgresses any of the 6. It's only the men. Women don't have this mitzvah of dinim, and therefore they're not commanded in dinim.
So by the hand is a reference to the court system?
Well, Edrosh, where it says I will demand. The verse reads, V'ach, and however, as dimchem, your blood, the nafshei seichem, for your lives, Edrosh, I will demand, miyad kol chaya, from the hand of any living beast, Edroshem, I will demand it, miyad ha'adam, from the hand of the man, miyad ish achi, from the hand of man and his brother, Edrosh, I will demand, as nefesh ha'adam, the soul of man. Now that was a very funny reading. So let's see how.
Sounds then that a woman would be exempt from punishment.
It does. So if she ever transgresses any of the, yeah, it does. Good point. All right, it reads like this. After it says about eating, you shall not eat flesh detached from an animal or its blood while it is still alive. But I will demand an account for your blood if you take your own lives through suicide. So that's the prohibition of suicide. I will demand the same from every animal that takes a human life. from a man who intentionally kills another man, or a man who kills another man whom he loves like his brother unintentionally, I will demand the man's life. So a woman cannot be a judge for Bnei Noach. Yeah. So, can Judge Judy judge Bnei Noach? Although she's Jewish.
Is it considered a Jewish court?
No.
Because a woman can't be on a base then for Jews.
Or on a based in for Goyim. So either way you look at it.
Yeah. Technically, no. Then, weren't there women in throughout Jewish history that?
Besides Devorah, who else?
Yeah, well, she's Devorah of our time. Pretty.
Well, I would then say, just thinking, the only thing would be, there's a concept of kiblu, that if the litigants accept upon themselves a certain individual, even though the individual in essence does not have the power to rule over them, but if the two of them accept that.
Which is funny because I think that's actually how they get people on the show. They say, do you forego going to your local court,
Right.
and do you...
Right.
That's
So
funny.
that might work. And that's really how it could work even in a base thing, if the litigants agree to go to an individual, so
That's interesting. What's the name of that? What's it called?
kiblu,
Kiblu.
that they accept it
Interesting.
upon themselves. See, in halacha, for Jews at least, the person can even be, the example,
You
or the
mentioned
classic.
that before, yeah.
It could be a roya sign. The person can even be a shepherd,
Mm-hmm.
which means he's not well versed in Jewish law. He's not a Talmud Chacham. He's not a Torah scholar. But if the two people say, we know that, and we accept this person to judge us because we think he's very fair, and we'll go with whatever he says. So in that case, they could do that. Just like a Jewish court, even today, has to have 3 judges. They can say that we accept these 2 individuals and we want to go by these 2. Or even this one. We say this person is such an expert, he's such a big Rav, we accept him. And if they accept that one person, that's okay, even though the rule has got to have 3. So similarly, they could say we want this person who's not even a Rav. They both want that, that's okay. And they have to accept. So maybe, I'm just thinking, maybe that would work as well. by Bnei Noach. It's just that a woman can't be appointed a judge by force. You can't tell the people, this is the judge of our town, and you must now come to court. The guy can protest, and he could say, I'm sorry, that's a woman. I don't go to such a judge, and then you cannot force the person to appear before her because he's right. A judge for Bnei Noach must be a man. But if everybody's accepting that individual, that might be different, perhaps. That concludes the section within this Bnei Noach entry in the Encyclopedia Talmudit of the 7 mitzvahs. But by no means are we done with the topic of Bnei Noach as it appears in this Talmudic encyclopedia. But he just went through all 7. And they defined or brought down from all the sources everything about the 7, starting with Avodah Zarah, and then Birkas Hashem, blasphemy, Arayos, forbidden relations, I skip a bunch. Here we go. Yeah, Avodah Zarah, Birkas Hashem, murder, Shvichus Damim, Gilu Arayos, Gezel, robbery, Aver Min Achai, and now Dinim. So you think, okay, so that's it. So no, they still have a lot to say. And it goes on now for several more pages. And I didn't make more copies. What page are you guys up to?
Shin Nun Vav.
Oh, good. Okay. So perfect. So I have to remember to make copies for next week. So now we continue on Shin Nun Vav, right-hand column, 3rd paragraph. Be'isurim acherim. After we've discussed now all the 7, now they say, what about other prohibitions? Now remember, other isurim, prohibitions, acherim, others.
Others, okay. I thought that was afters. I was like,
Probably it's the same root. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now we said that in the back, after we finish this, we have the list of 30 that there are. So now he's saying, but what about other prohibitions besides these 7? Milvad, besides Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, the 7 Noachite commandments. Donu, it has been discussed, has been judged. Af al mitzvahs lo yisaseh acheros. Even other negatives, other prohibitions. Im b'nei Noach muzharin aleihen, whether b'nei Noach are commanded and forewarned not to transgress them. So there's a discussion. These are the 7. But what about others? Yesh shehoisifu, there are those that added al sheva hamitzvahs onto these 7 commandments. The yesh, and then you have those shehoitziu dinim ubirkas Hashem. They took out, they exclude the 2 of dinim, of laws, of court system, and of birkas Hashem, of blasphemy. Mimispar sheva hamitzvahs, from the number of the 7 mitzvahs. V'yichnisu acherim bimkaimam, and they placed others in their stead. In other words, they still wanted to stick to the number 7, so they took out these and they put in other ones. Do you remember what the other ones were? One of them at least seemed so random. They put in
Seeds.
right, kilayim, the prohibition of mixing forbidden seeds like grapes and grain, and sirus of what do you call it, to make male sterile.
Castration.
Castration. So they say those are the 2 instead of dinim and birkas Hashem. Well, obviously, traditionally, or what's most accepted is these are the 7 that we just went through. But there are others, as he's going to go explain now. Besirus, when it comes to castration. Nechleku tanoim there's a dispute in the Mishnaic rabbis, going back to the times of the Mishnah. Reb Chitka v'Tonadvei Menashe. One of the rabbis named Reb Chitka, and the school of one of the rabbis, Menashe. Not to be confused with Menashe, the son of Yosef, who was one of the 12 tribes, and not to be confused with the king Menashe in the Book of Kings. This is a later Menashe, who was he's a Tana. So these two, Reb Chitka and the school of Menashe, Soivrim, they hold Shebnei Noach nitztavu olav. The Bnei Noach are commanded on Sirus. They're not allowed to castrate. Shenemar, and the way they derive that is because the verse in Bereshis, when Hashem is speaking to Noach, says, Shir tzu va'aretz urevuva. Swarm in the land and become many, multiply in it. Meaning to say that there's a prohibition against making any male unable to reproduce. And we're not only talking about people, we're talking about animals. So you can't take your cat to the vet or the animal hospital and have it, what's it called, neutered? So according to this, that is a prohibition for anybody to do, not only for Jews. For Jews it's for sure forbidden, that's no question. We're saying for Bnei Noach, according to this opinion, it would be a prohibition.
I think neutering, is that only for the female? Cat, yeah.
The Chachamim and the other rabbis, Cholkim, they disagree with this first opinion. The Soivrim, and they hold, Shepasuk zeh livracha nemar, that this verse that they're quoting as their source, their proof text as a source, was stated only as a blessing, v'loy lemitzvah, not as a commandment. Hashem is blessing mankind to be fruitful, and He's giving us the blessing, the power to reproduce. It's not a commandment of not being allowed to sterilize anyone.
Spade, that's what it's called. For the female, it's called spade.
And for the male?
Neutered,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's in relation to the technique, the actual physical technique that's used, or the actual technical term.
And for humans and animals, it's the same terminology?
I don't know. That's why I brought it up.
Can a man be neutered, or that's just
No,
animals?
a man can be neutered, but I don't know what they
Oh,
call
for an
it
animal.
for a female.
No, I'm saying a man and a male dog are both neutered?
Yes.
And what about castrated?
So that, I would say it's the same thing, but for the technical term for dogs, it's neutered. It's the same thing.
V'afal pisha b'nei Noach, and although b'nei Noach ad matan Torah, until the giving of the Torah, mitzuvim al pirya v'rivya, are commanded to have children, to be fruitful and multiply. V'hasiru subitul mitzvazu, and to neuter is nullifying this commandment. So, like, what's the question? Bnei Noach are required to have children, and if you make a man unable to have children, so then it's a transgression. So, what's the discussion? That is only if the person transgresses himself. And in this case, the second opinion that says that it's not a prohibition, it's only a blessing, they agree with the first opinion. That prior to the giving of the Torah, all of mankind, Bnei Noach, were forbidden for an individual man to neuter himself, or whatever the correct term is. But to neuter others, or animals, mutarim, they're permitted. So everybody agrees that a man is not allowed to make himself unable to reproduce. But to be a doctor who does that for others, according to the Chum, is not a prohibition, which needs to be understood, because if it's forbidden for an individual to do it, how can you do it to him? Or how can you assist him in what he's not allowed to do? But let's focus on the animals.
And we're just talking about males right now.
I believe so. believe so, because the whole commandment is only on the man anyway. Because it says, V'chivshu, and conquer the land. So from that we learn out that if someone actively chooses not to have any children, so if it's a man, he's actually transgressing.
Really?
Whereas a woman is not. If a woman decides, I don't want to ever get married, or I don't want to have children, or she has herself surgically, whatever the term is,
Sterilized, or
right, or they
birth control,
the tubes, not the tubes, whatever. So she will not be transgressing. She's not commanded to reproduce. Whereas a man, or perhaps a man who marries such a woman, would be transgressing.
How is that? Yeah.
No,
right.
A woman could say, I don't want to have children. Okay, so then don't get married. All right, I don't get married.
Yeah.
Or she could say, I only want to
But
marry
they're
a
not
man.
married.
Or if
They
a man,
know.
or if she wants to marry a man who has another wife or has children or something, whatever.
Yeah, so what is so? Well, I mean, so Ben Noach in that situation, he's married to a woman who doesn't want to have kids.
Yeah.
He's transgressing. Now he's married to a woman, and the
Does he have any children from a previous marriage?
Maybe not.
All right.
So
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
yeah,
Good
but perhaps he can say that, after they divorce or she dies, he'll marry someone else. Because he may not
It
be.
seems the prohibition is based upon whether there's a commandment to reproduce.
Right, so we're saying that prior to Matan Torah, there is an outright commandment for a man to
That's
reproduce.
another thing too. It's not a positive commandment. It's just not to neuter.
Well,
But this is considered to be like neutering.
but if we're saying that it's from Pru or Vu, then it is a positive one, which again means that Bnei Noach have a positive commandment.
Yeah.
Unlike the 6 that are all negative.
Right. Is
This-
that the actual issue here?
Well, no, because it's pretty good. This is not one of the 6. So we
Right.
started off saying the negative, that they can't neuter.
Right.
No serious. But now we're at the point where we're saying that they do have a commandment to reproduce.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess this goes back to like a really the question that we talked about, which is how are we deriving what is clearly a mitzvah for Jews, for instance? How are we deriving that and putting that upon Bnei Noach? And it is a mitzvah type. It is a law that is a mitzvah type. But when it is applied to non-Jews, suddenly it's like, well, it's like not a mitzvah.
All
it's an
right, so
obligation.
that's going to bring us again back to the discussion that we've had several times and long ago. When the Torah was given, did it undo everything from before, and Bnei Noach no longer have to keep any of the 7 because of what was told to Adam and Noach? And now it's being reinstated to Moshe, and that's why the emphasis that ideally, and to be from Chasidei Umay Sa'ilam, the non-Jew has to accept it, that it was given to Moshe Misinai. That's crucial.
Okay.
Why? Why can't we just say, I keep it because it's a commandment of God to Adam and Noach?
But then we also learned out that there are Bnei Noach who are commanded. They consider themselves commanded, and they even say mitzvah from Noach, not from Moshe. And for instance, what we learned in the previous work, that was considered to be a mitzvah. And then we learned what a Hasidei, an actual Hasid Moto Alam is, from the Tana of Rabbi Eliezer, who said that it's somebody who is mitzvah from Noach.
Do you remember where we said that they weren't keeping it, and therefore Hashem started taking it away? That there was this time
In
period.
Bava Kama.
So there was a time period where the attitude basically was, so to say, you're not keeping these laws, I'm revoking them.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened by the beginning of the Torah? It almost becomes optional. Now we don't really follow that lahalacha. We say, no, every Ben Noach is obligated to keep them. And according to the Rambam, they're all capital offenses. But there is that approach that it's not a capital offense anymore, and as a matter of fact, they're all optional, and you want to keep them good. Now, we don't take that approach, but right now, is a Ben Noach obligated to keep the 7 because they're written in the Torah after the giving of the Torah, like we discussed by Jews? Those mitzvahs that are prior to Matan Torah, the Jew only has to keep them because they were written in the Torah and reinstated by Hashem at Sinai. But just because they were told to Avraham, that's not binding for the Jews. Or just because Yaakov Avinu, it says clearly, therefore your descendants shall not eat this part of the animal, the Gid Hanasheh. That's not binding. It's only because Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, I want you to write that in the Torah. But it's not because Hashem said that to Yaakov. Remember that?
It's kind of so. To clarify, is it because Hashem said that to Moshe and Moshe wrote it about Yaakov? Is that a better
because
way
Hashem
of
told
looking at it?
Moshe, I want you to write this about Yaakov. In other words,
Okay.
from the beginning of creation,
So
from Bereshis till the giving of the Torah, were there any events that are not recorded in the Torah?
Say that. So
From Bereshis, from the beginning of creation, until the giving of the Torah in the year 2448, are there any events that were not recorded in the Torah?
it's kind of
It's very simple.
No, not really. It's a Schrodinger's cat problem.
What?
Almost. It's like a. I don't know if you've heard of some Schrodinger's cat, but like you're asking.
Simple question.
It's not.
Again.
It really isn't.
There are 2,448 years.
Okay.
In the beginning, Hashem created the heavens and the earth. And he tells us the story of creation. Okay? Now we get to the second book of the 5 books. And in the middle of the book of Shemois, there is the revelation at Sinai.
Right.
When Hashem introduces himself and says the Aseret Adibros, the 10 Commandments.
It's a chicken and the egg problem.
No.
Yeah.
I'm asking you a simple question. I'm asking you a very simple question. Don't be afraid to answer. Simple question.
But you can't because you'll nullify yourself if you answer it.
No. Again, are there any events that transpired between the beginning of creation and the giving of the Torah that are not recorded in the Torah? Why are you afraid to answer?
I'm not afraid. It's because it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a paradox.
Why is that? You're misreading. You're misunderstanding. You're taking it too deep. I'm asking a very simple question, straightforward question. It's not even a trick question. It's straightforward.
On a basic level.
Yeah.
So Moshe had Bereshis up to the point where he was there at Sinai.
Okay, but first answer my question. Anything that's not, is there anything that's not recorded in the Torah from Bereshis till the giving of the Torah?
I wouldn't know. I don't know. I honestly can't say, because I don't know. I can tell you. I can tell you with a probability or something like that, or what but I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't. I can't say.
The Torah tells us the generations from Adam till Noach.
Mm-hmm.
It lists the names.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then it tells us from Noach to Avraham, and it lists the names.
I'll give you. Okay, here's. I can give you an answer. Probably Avraham. It doesn't say that he kept all the mitzvahs in the Torah, but we know that he did.
So in the Torah is
the Chumash, I should say.
So in the Chumash, he's born. Mm-hmm. We know who his father is. Mm-hmm. Okay, who he married. All right, we know, and the next thing we find out about him is that he's 75 years old, and Hashem tells him to leave the land and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anything else happened to him in his first 75 years of his life?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's written in the Torah because.
Where?
Well, it's not written in the Chumash, yeah, right? I guess.
Even in the oral Torah, we know what he did day to day.
No, not day to day.
Okay. And all those names, all those people from Noach till Avraham.
Same thing.
We don't know what they do. We don't know anything about some of them.
Yeah.
Okay. My point is that every single word in the 5 books of Moses, as they're called, is divine, is God dictated, letter for letter, how to spell every single word. So Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, I want you to write the following. I'm not going to tell it to you and I want you to paraphrase it. That's not your job. You're not a secretary who's going to write shorthand and then you're going to write it the way you want. I am telling you what to write. So, Bereishis, Bara, Elokim, Hashemayim, Ve'esa Aretz. And here's what you're to write. Now, there's a lot more details. Don't write it. And there's a lot of midrashim. Don't write it. And there's a lot of interpretation. Don't write it. And there's a lot of depth to it. Don't write it. These are the words I'm telling you to write. Now, in those words, there can be literally infinite depth. No question about that. But these are the words I want you to put the pen, the quill, with the ink onto parchment. And it's going to be a Sefer Torah. It won't be a Sefer Torah for another 40 years because you need to have the entire Torah, and the end of it is going to be the end of the 40 years in the wilderness with your demise. So I'm not up to that point yet. We didn't get there yet. And I'm not telling you to write the future. I'm not telling you, oh, guess what? I'm going to tell you now what's going to happen in the next 40 years. Write it down, but keep it a secret. No. It was written piece by piece. But when they got to this point, Hashem says, well, let's start from the beginning. So all of Bereshis, he told him to write. The whole story of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, all those details. And there's lots of things that happened that he wasn't told to write, so he didn't write them. There was a lot more interaction happening over there. It's not part of the Torah, so it's not written. And then comes Shemais, I want you to write that. And then comes your birth, you write that. And keep writing and writing until you got to the giving of the Torah. So now the question is, all those things that are written beforehand. So now we know that Hashem commanded Adam and Hashem commanded Noach. So any way you want to look at it, the reason why Ben Noach has to keep his mitzvahs today is because they're God-given. That's for sure. Okay? The question is, does the giving of the Torah, the revelation at Sinai to the Jewish people, does that play a role for Bnei Noach? So one way to look at it is and say, no, all the 7 mitzvahs are written beforehand. They're in Bereshis. Yeah, we only know about them because Moshe wrote them down because Hashem told him what to write. Fine. So that's nice. But the Ben Noach doesn't have to keep it because of the revelation at Sinai. He only knows about them because Moshe wrote them down. Fine. So thank you very much, Moses. Okay. But he has to keep them. The other way of looking at it is no. He doesn't have to keep them at all if not for the revelation at Sinai. Because when Hashem gave the Torah to the world, included in that Torah is the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach.
There's also an issue of like, what does he mean he has to keep? Has to keep for what? For what reward?
We're not speaking about punishment or reward. We're talking about commanded by God. Are you commanded or not? It's a separate issue that, there's punishment and reward. But commanded. You were created by Him. He's the creator, and here's the rules. So here's what He's telling you got to do. So prior to the giving of the Torah, there is the commandment of pru'urvu, of being fruitful, multiplying. And for a person to do sirus, they are then transgressing this mitzvah, and it even applies to a person who already has children. And now we're saying that the sirus is also forbidden to do to animals. But this is where the dispute comes about. Reb Chitka and the yeshiva of Menashe, they hold clearly that it's a commandment, and therefore Bnei Noach are not allowed to do sirus.
That's one of the 7 commandments after Sinai, or given at Sinai.
No, they're learning it from before. Verse says it's
well, they're learning it from a verse from before, but are they saying that it's one of the 7 from Sinai? Yeah,
because then they would just take out one of the other 7 to make it. If you need to have 7, then yeah. But the Chachamim say that no, it's just a blessing, this pasuk. But they agree that mankind is commanded, and therefore, so what's the argument? Whether you could do sirus to animals or to birds. A person that has a bird can he take the bird to the veterinarian and say, I want you to neuter this bird, or whatever the term would be? So according to the Chacham, there's no problem. That's okay. Because the birds were just given a blessing to be fruitful and multiply. They weren't commanded. And I'm not commanded to see to it that they are fruitful and multiply.
They probably don't need a command, maybe.
You mean all the animals?
Probably getting a little too deep on that aspect.
Okay. So according to the Chachamim, since there's no commandment, and there's no commandment on the human being to mix out of it, I'm not obligated to, worry about that. So what's the halacha? Which opinion do we follow? La halacha nechleku rishonim. So when it comes to what the actual ruling is, there's a dispute between the Rishonim based on this argument of the Tanoim. Yesh poiskim, there are those codifiers, shasirus mutar livnei Noach. There are those that rule that sirus is permitted, like the Chachamim say. In footnote 274, he lists all the ones that have this opinion, that say that it's permitted. And there are those that they rule that it is forbidden for Bnei Noach to do it. And in 275, he lists the ones that say that it's forbidden.
So there are those who say that even though it's not one of the seven, it's still forbidden?
Well, we're not getting into figuring out how it fits into the numbers. Mm-hmm. Those that say that it's forbidden might actually count it as one of the seven. Okay, now, in the Even HaEzer section of the Shulchan Aruch, the first laws are the laws of being fruitful and multiplying. And then again, this is the Shulchan Aruch written for the Jews. In chapter 5, a Jew is not allowed to tell a non-Jew to neuter his animal, a Jew's animal. In other words, a Jew can't take his animal to a non-Jewish veterinarian and tell him to neuter his animal. But if the non-Jew took it on his own and did it, that's permissible. And if the Jew made a trick to do it without telling him, I can't tell you, but I would really like
the Jewish animal.
Yeah.
Jewish animal.
Yeah. So then, Kain Sinai say. So then we give a fine to the Jew for doing that. Even, the Ramah adds, even if the Jew didn't do this trick, but the non-Jew knows the Jew, and he's doing it for his benefit. He realizes that this Jew would appreciate it. Mm-hmm. So even then, since the Jew didn't stop him or didn't, so we fine him.
Did you?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Then the Ramah says.
Sounds like a Shabbos boy.
Yeah. Then the Ramah says like this.
Neuter goy.
A Jew is allowed to give his animal to a non-Jew to split the profits. Okay, you can do business and give it to him and say you can use the animal, and then you can use my ox to plow the field, and then we split the profits. It's my animal, so you pay me half the profits, whatever. Even though the Jew knows that the non-Jew will certainly neuter the animal. That's permissible because the non-Jew is doing it on his own. He's not doing it as a favor for the Jew. He's not doing it because the Jew told him to. I'm saying I'm the owner of the ox, and here, hold on to this ox for 10 years. But he doesn't. But the non-Jew doesn't want the ox to reproduce. That's okay. Then he says you're allowed to sell to non-Jews animals and chickens, even though they certainly, the non-Jewish buyer is buying it to neuter it. Then he says, and there are those that forbid it. However, if the non-Jewish buyer is not the one who himself neuters it, but he gives it to another non-Jew to neuter, then everybody agrees that it's permissible, says the Ramah.
Purification. That's weird.
And just parenthetically, in this whole thing, every time I keep saying non-Jew, but you know what word it uses over here?
No free.
Kusi.
Kusi, no joke, really?
Yeah, but I don't think it's bad. I think it's just a censorship.
Yeah, because that definitely sounds like what's the thing? La Mari, La Nochri, on Shabbos or something like that.
Amir Lanochri.
Amir, yeah. We could have a Amir on Nochri on whatever.
Yeah, I'm serious. Okay, then he says V'oidayin Amir Lanochri Shvus. The next thing he talks about is, he says, take a look about in the laws of Shabbos in this encyclopedia about Amira L'Nachri Shvus.
Oh, wow. See?
The Shari Surim and all other prohibitions. V'ayin Sirus. Himutu L'Tzavas L'Nachri L'Saris Bem Teshel Yisrael. Is it permissible to outright instruct, to command a non-Jew to be Mesaris, the animal of a Jew, which is what we just saw here. All right, next. That was all about Sirus. So even la halacha, it's not clear, but we would probably go with the Ramah, which basically means that a Jew cannot neuter his animal. He cannot tell a non-Jew to neuter it, but he could give it to the non-Jew even though he knows for sure that he will neuter it. But if the non-Jew is not doing it for the Jew's benefit, even though the animal is Jewish owned, you can let him do it, and selling it to a non-Jew who's going to give it to another non-Jew to neuter is also permissible, which is interesting because that seems to say that it would be permissible for the non-Jew, unless you want to say that the Ramah's approach is that I'm not obligated to tell the non-Jew what to do. He's really not allowed to do it himself anyway, but that's not my problem. So one can make that argument that the Ramah is like taking the approach, I'm just writing this for the Jews, and you're not in charge, and you're not the policeman for the non-Jewish world. You want to talk about Shevet B'nai Noach? I'm not talking about that. That could be one approach of how to read the Ramah.
That's it.
Next, Bekishuf, witchcraft.
Whoa.
Rabbi Shimon Oimer Shnitztavu B'nai Noach. The Tana, Rabbi Shimon, he states that B'nai Noach are commanded, they're not allowed to practice any witchcraft, no magic. Shneimar, because the verse says, Mechashefa lo yisechayeh. You are not allowed to let a witch live.
Who are you?
So that verse is written in Mishpatim. So you assume it's written for Jews.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so why does it apply to a non-Jew? I mean, it's by the way, that's the whole pasuk. It's 3 words. It's 3 words, and it's clearly written to the Jew. So what does that have to do with anything? What kind of proof is that? V'samuch lo nemar, but juxtaposed to that verse, it says, Kol sheichim be'emem yumas. Anyone who lies with an animal, what's that called? Beastonomy?
Bestiality.
Bestiality is a capital offense. So what's the point of saying you can't let a witch live? And right next to that it says you're not allowed to lie with an animal. To teach us Kol sheyeshne bichlal sheichim behema, that anybody who's included in the prohibition of bestiality, yeshne bichlal mechashefa l'schaya, is included in the prohibition of not allowing a witch to live, no witchcraft. That's how the Torah is teaching us that it applies to non-Jews as well. So witchcraft and magic, black magic, whatever, all those things, according to Reb Shimon, is biblically forbidden for Bnei Noach. Rabbi Yosei Omer, a contemporary of Reb Shimon, a different Tana, he says, Kol ha'amur b'parshas Kishuv ben Noach muzhar olav. Anything which it speaks about in the section of the Torah about Kishuv, for a Jew, about the prohibition of magic, a Ben Noach is commanded as well. V'hainu, meaning to say, Lo yimatzei b'cha, it shall not be found amongst you, ma'avir b'noyu v'itoi ba'esh, one who takes his son or his daughter in the fire. There was a certain type of, I don't know if it exists anywhere today, there was a certain type of idolatry where they would make a fire and they would have the father would give over to the priest his children or his grandchildren or something, and they would walk like in between two fires or through the fire on hot coals, something like that, and give them over like that. So that is a prohibition, and that's clearly speaking against Jews. It's a prohibition for the Jews to do that. Okay? And he says it applies to non-Jews. Or, Koisim Kisamim, one who does magic. Me'oinein, u'menachesh, u'mechashev, v'chover chover, v'shoyel oiv yidoini. All these are different types of witchcraft. There was one called oiv, or yidoini. V'deir shalamesim, or one who speaks to the dead, to bring the dead back, and things like that. He says all of these things in this whole list that the Torah is negating and big time forbidden for a Jew applies to all of Bnei Noach as well. Why? It says B'cha. It says it shouldn't be found amongst you, talking to the Jews. Shekei nemar sham, because what does the verse say? The verse states right over there, gives a reason. It says Uviglala toyevoisa elim, because of these abominations, Hashem Elokecha moirish oisam mi panecha. Hashem is expelling these despicable nations from you because they have committed all of these abominable crimes. Okay, that means they're being punished for it. So since all of these nations, the Canaani and An, are being punished for these...
They can't dwell in the land.
What?
They can't dwell in the land, which means they're going against Sheva Mitzvah.
Michlal, this implies, that they're commanded. Because you don't punish unless you're forewarned. You can't punish someone for doing something unless they're forbidden to do it, right? In all fairness, the Torah doesn't punish if you're not, unless it forbids it. So since it says that because of these they have been expelled from the land, that proves that it's forbidden. Where the prohibition is written, I don't know, but this is how we learn it. This is how it's written. Now, Chachamim, the sages, shechashvu rak sheva mitzvos livnei Noach, that they enumerate only 7 commandments for the Bnei Noach. So what about all these? Right? Choylukim, they disagree. V'soivrim, and they hold she'enam muzhar ala kishuv, that the Bnei Noach are not commanded against kishuv, magic. They say there's only 7, and you can't add all these prohibitions of witchcraft and the like. They're not forbidden.
Who says this?
The Chachamim, the other rabbis. They disagree with Reb Shimon and Rabbi Yossi. So you can ask the logical question, so why were these nations punished? The Torah says they were expelled because of these abominable acts. They were not punished Ella al sheviru b'neim ba'esh shehi avodah zarah. He says no, they did one abominable act. They were punished for one of these things. Which one? The first one that we listed, and that's avodah zarah. That act of taking one's son or daughter through the fire to give them over to the priest, that is avodah zarah. That's not witchcraft. So witchcraft is not forbidden. Avodah zarah, of course, it's one of the 7. Or alternatively, al shemaisi mele v'yois and avodah zarah. That it's all of these acts of witchcraft led them to do avodah zarah. It's not that they are avodah zarah or that they are forbidden, but when the Torah says that because of these acts they were expelled of the land, What it means to say is because of these acts, they served other gods, and they transgressed Avodah Zarah, and therefore they were expelled. So Chachamim say that these acts are not forbidden. So now what is the ruling? Is it or isn't it? I'm learning with Ben Noach, and you want to know, can I practice witchcraft or not? Can you go to the Far East, and over there, can you learn how to do all this witchcraft? So he says, "La halacha nefek Rishonim." When it comes to the ruling, what is the ruling? There's a dispute amongst the Rishonim again. Yesh soivrim. There are those that hold shemutarim bekishuf, that the non-Jew, the Ben Noach, is permitted to do magic. Ve'eliezer Eved Avraham. Now going back to
so then maybe it's just an issue of kishuf on the land.
What?
Maybe then it's just an issue of kishuf on the land.
On the land? What do you mean?
Non-Jew can't.
Saying why were they expelled?
Yeah, so you would have then three opinions. One would be because of witchcraft, one would be because of idolatry, or witchcraft that led to idolatry, and another would be kishuf.
Kishuf is witchcraft.
Or, not kishuf, I'm sorry. What did we just mention?
Which one?
Oh, did I read that wrong? Maybe I'm confusing. Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I'm confusing kishuf with when you have an intermediary middleman that you give power.
Oh, shifu.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was my bad.
Oh, okay. No. Okay, got it. I was wondering what you were saying.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, got it. So, biblically, let's go back to the story of the Bible. Eliezer Eved Avraham. Long story. The first shidduch, the first matchmaking story that we find in the Torah, in world history, that is. Adam and Chava didn't really have much of a choice, right? He had to marry her, no one else around, and she was part of him. We don't find out how anybody chose their spouse throughout the whole story, throughout the whole Torah, up until it comes to Avraham wanting to find a wife for his son Yitzchak. So Avram takes his slave Eliezer, and he makes him actually swear, and he sends him on a mission to go get a wife for Yitzchak. All right? Now, Yitzchak has got this tremendous responsibility, this big job, find an appropriate wife who's befitting for his master's son, Yitzchak. So he arrives in the location where Avram sent him, to the relatives. And Eliezer then makes a deal. He asks Hashem, and then he makes a deal. Shenichesh. He did one of the things that are in this list of things. It says menachesh, to guess. What did he do? V'omar. And he says like this. Shehanara, that the girl, shetoimar loy, that will tell him. Shetashkeo, he said that she will give him to drink. Vesgimalov, and she will give his camels to drink. That's the appropriate wife. That's the sign. He made himself a sign. That's called menachesh. That's one of the things that's in the list that you can't do. Even though such a thing is forbidden. So some say it's because Bnei Noach are not commanded. That's okay. A Jew can't do it. Eliezer wasn't Jewish. Got it?
He's still a servant of Abraham.
So, even if he's an Eved Kanani, he doesn't have to keep the Torah mitzvahs, right?
Yeah.
Besides the fact that we could say that before Matan Torah,
So he didn't keep them as mitzvahs.
nobody had to keep any of them, and even Avram kept the whole Torah, but that doesn't mean that his Eved did.
Well, if you kept the whole Torah,
Yeah.
then Torah says your Eved does keep.
What?
Well, you can't. He's an extension of you. He's your hand.
So an Evet can't do what? Can't transgress anything?
I wouldn't think so. Because then he's like a Gerd Tzedek. Like a Gerd Tzedek, right? But maybe Abraham wasn't. Maybe he did things. Maybe he did Torah, but maybe he didn't do them as
Like we said about
like a
Yaakov marrying two sisters.
Yeah. You know, yeah.
Yeah, but that means that he did it voluntarily,
Yeah.
as long as it didn't contradict the Shev Mitzvahs. But here it's not contradicting it. Here Eliezer is simply transgressing. It's not like Eliezer had to do it in order to keep the Shev Mitzvahs.
Yeah, but it's not. But he's not doing it as it's not mandatory what he just did.
What, Eliezer?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, what did he gain? If, according to what we're saying, that they voluntarily kept all the mitzvahs, then it should have been forbidden for him to do that.
Right.
The Yesh Soivim, and some say, Shasurim b'kishuv. No, the kishuv is forbidden for Bnei Noach. What about Eliezer? That sign that Eliezer gave himself, Ein loy begeder kishuv. They say that's not kishuv. That's not forbidden. That's okay. That's not called menachesh. Okay, now in truth, it's a dispute between the Rambam and the Ramban. In the laws of Avodah Zarah, the Rambam and the Ramban discuss Eliezer.
Oh.
Here. Says the Rambam in chapter 11 of the laws of Avodah Zarah, of idolatry. Ein menachashin, it is forbidden to do nichush, a type of guessing, like the non-Jews do. Let's see how the English translation of...
Did you say nichush?
Yeah.
Is that from the same word as like nachash?
Well, it is the same shirish, yeah.
Interesting.
All right, this is in Book of Devarim, Deuteronomy, Parshas Shoiftim, interestingly. Chapter 18, verse 10, 11, and 12. There must not be found anyone among you, meaning to the Jews, who...
That's funny you say that, though, because we just learned earlier, among you means not...
No, well, that's the whole point, because it says in verse 12 that because of these abominations they were expelled. That's how we know that it's forbidden for Bnei Noach as well. But here it's talking to the Jew. But we know that it's a prohibition because they were expelled. They were punished. So, what can you not have? Passes his son or daughter between two fires, and that is called moilech. That's the name of that. Avodah Zarah is moilech. Koisem kesamim, practices stick divination.
Yeah, stick divination, yeah.
Me'oinein, acts on the basis of fortuitous times. Umenachesh, divines, on the basis of strange occurrences. And that's the question what Eliezer did. Was that called menachesh? Umechashev, practices sorcery. V'choiver charim, v'choiver chaver, divines with animals. V'shoyel oiv, turns to the sorcery of oiv, v'yidoini or yidoini. V'deir shel mesim, raises and consults with spirits of the dead. Going back to Vayikra, Parshas Kedoshim. Yeah, so it's originally written in Kedoshim, in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, 19, verse 26. So, the Rambam says that it is forbidden to do this nichush, because the verse says, Lo yisnachashu. And then he says, well, how is this? What is nachash? For example, those that say that since I dropped my bread or I dropped my staff, my stick from my hand, I'm not going to go to this and this place today because if I go, I will not succeed. Or since a fox walked to my right or a black cat crossed my path, he doesn't say the black cat, but I'm just throwing that in.
It's like superstition.
Exactly.
A lot of people believe that today.
Yeah. I'm not going to walk out of my house today because if I go out, then a cheater, a person who's a liar, I will encounter him. And likewise, those that listen to the different chirpings of the birds and they say this is going to happen, that's going to happen because it made this sound, or it's good to do this thing, it's bad to do that thing. And likewise, those that say you should slaughter that chicken because it croaked at night, or slaughter this, well, that was a rooster, slaughter this hen because it croaked like a rooster. And likewise, one who places signs for himself, if such and such will happen, then I'll do such and such, and if not, then I won't. Like Eliezer Eved Avram. So the Rambam says it's forbidden. And he says, likewise, all the things which are similar to this, it's all forbidden. Whoever does these things for the Jew gets 39 lashes. So the Rambam uses Eliezer Eved Avram as an example of what we cannot do. Says the Ravid.
He says like you can't do it for a Jew.
No, he says a Jew is not allowed to do what Eliezer did. That's an example of what's forbidden to do. Says the Ravid. This is a big misunderstanding. For this is absolutely permitted. And he says that Eliezer, what he did, is not considered in Menachesh. He was permitted to do that.
Does he say why?
Well, he says maybe the term, the language that was used, is what confused the Rambam, but it's not a problem. Then the Kesef Mishnah over here goes on, and he says, after he quotes the Ravid, then he says, and it appears from his words, that Nichush is forbidden for Bnei Noach. Why? Because Eliezer of Avram was a Ben Noach.
Was a Ben Noach.
Yeah.
Interesting. He says was, not din of Bnei Noach.
No, Eliezer of Avram Ben Noach was a Ben Noach.
Because it says Avram had a din of Bnei Noach. You know.
Avram was a Ben Noach. And the Torah wasn't given yet. And he brings down also from a commentary that Nachash is forbidden for Bnei Noach. So if Eliezer did it, it must have been okay, because Eliezer was very righteous. Then he brings down the different opinions, whether Kishuf is forbidden for Bnei Noach or not. Yeah, there's a very long Kesef Mishnah here, discussing the whole idea. Okay, so
Where was that in the Rambam? I'm sorry.
in Avodah Zarah,
In Avodah Zarah.
chapter 11. So there's actually a machlokes whether kishuf, whether magic, is forbidden for Bnei Noach or not, even la halacha. Yeah, that would be according to this Kesef Mishnah. The way the Kesef Mishnah understands the Rambam, kishuf is forbidden for Bnei, is permitted for Bnei Noach. According to the Kesef Mishnah's understanding of the Rambam, Kishuf is permitted for Bnei Noach.
Even though the Rambam said it's...
For Jews are not allowed to. That's why he brings Eliezer down as an example. He says a Jew can't do it.
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's what the Rambam is saying. That a Jew can't do that.
So why he brought in a non-Jew as a...
Right. He's saying you may not do that as Eliezer did. Because Eliezer is not Jewish. He's a Ben Noach. Which means and Eliezer we know is righteous.
That's good logic, yeah. It's interesting. Application of logic, yeah.
However, according to others, the Ravid, it is forbidden for Bnei Noach as well, and therefore the Ravid says that Eliezer didn't do that. That's not what Eliezer did. He didn't transgress. Okay. Let's do one more piece here. So we're on Shin Nun Vav. Well, yeah. Well, you guys, this last page you have. Yeah, okay. You're just going to be missing one line. That's fine. Okay, Shin Nun Vav, page 356, left-hand column, in the middle. Rabbi Lazar Amar. Rabbi Lazar said, Bnei Noach nitztavu al kilayim. Bnei Noach are also commanded that they're not allowed to do kilayim. Now, kilayim is a term for any type of forbidden mixture. Well, not meat and milk, but otherwise, all forbidden mixtures. Not, you see, traditionally we generally use it for the forbidden things growing in the field, like to mix seeds or to mix vine with grain, but any type of mixture. Hainu meaning harboas behema varkovas ilonis, to crossbreed animals and to, is the term graft, trees. Those are forbidden. But what they are permitted to do, according to Rebbe Elazar, is to wear kilayim, which would mean what we call shatnez, the Torah calls it a woolen linen garment that they can wear. And they are allowed to mix seeds. In other words, they can't graft trees, but the seeds they're allowed to do. You can plant a mixture of seeds, or for that matter, grapes with grain. Shenemar. Now, why does he make this distinction and say they're not allowed to crossbreed animals and they're not allowed to graft trees? Because the verse states, "V'kilei behema v'kilei ilan," by the forbidden mixture of animals and trees, as chukoisai tishmeiru. The verse says, "You shall keep my statutes." Chukim shechokakti l'chokvar. The reading of the verse, the implication is, these are laws, statutes, which I've already established for you. When? It's the first time the Torah says it. Hainu shechakakti kvar livnei Noach, meaning I've already given these prohibitions to Bnei Noach. That's how Rashi explains it. So from the fact that the Torah introduces these to the Jew by saying those laws which I already gave you, that's how we understand that it's saying that Bnei Noach were already commanded. Hainu shechakakti kvar livnei Noach. I gave these laws to the Bnei Noach. Oi, or alternatively, shechakakti kvar b'maisa Bereshis, or I already commanded back to the story of creation, Bereshis. Shnemar sham, because of there it says liminehu, for its own kind. When it speaks about animals reproducing, it says they shall stick with their own kind. Hamoyre al isur kilayim, which that word is in reference to the prohibition of crossbreeding animals and trees. As well. It also uses the word liminehu. Back in Bereshis, chapter 1, verse 12 is talking about trees, and verse 24 is about animals. Chachamim shemanu sheva mitzvahs bilvad. But again, what about the Chachamim, the sages that say there's only 7? So how are you going to add in kilayim, forbidden mixtures of animals and trees, if there's only 7? So they say that they're not obligated. They're not, or it's not a death penalty. It's not a capital offense to crossbreed or to graft. So what do they do with the verse that says, "And keep my statutes"? They interpreted that laws that I've given my world, meaning things which I placed into nature. That's what I'm telling you to do. When it comes to these mitzvahs of not crossbreeding animals and not grafting different trees, so Hashem is saying that I've placed into nature. Not that I've commanded anybody. The nature of animals is to stick to their own kind.
So don't undo my...
Exactly, but it's still just to the Jews. The reason why it's saying it in past tense doesn't mean that I've commanded, it means that I've established as nature. And the same thing with the trees. So the Chachamim say clearly that it was never given as a prohibition to Bnei Noach, and it's never forbidden until the Jews got this prohibition where it says that I've made this the nature of the world already. La halacha, who do we follow? Again, Nechlik Rishonim. Again, there's a dispute what the halacha is, whether it applies to Bnei Noach or not. Yesh posku, there are those that rule Bnei Noach asurim barba varkova, that Bnei Noach are forbidden to crossbreed and to cross-graft. And that would be the Rambam as well. Umehem, and amongst those that say that it's forbidden, Shekasvu, that wrote, She isuran mina Kabbalah, that this prohibition is just a tradition. I mean, it's forbidden, but it's not like it's written. And therefore, even though it's absolutely forbidden, but it's not a capital offense. So that would be one reason why it's not part of the 7, because the 7 are all capital. So it's forbidden for Bnei Noach to crossbreed and to cross-graft, but there's no punishment of death. V'yeshe pasku, this line you don't have. Kachachamim shebnei Noach mutarim ba'arbav arkava, and there are those that rule that Bnei Noach are permitted, they're outright permitted to crossbreed and to cross-graft. And the sources for that are the Ritva and others. All right, in Yeridea, chapter Reish Tzadik Zayin 297, it says as follows: it is forbidden for a Jew to give his animal to a non-Jew to crossbreed it. Wait, is that the word? Yeah.
Which footnote are we on, Rabbi?
This one is in 301, but you don't have. That's the next page. Sorry.
Oh, did we skip stuff?
No. I went straight.
Oh.
I'm on the. I did one line on the next page.
Oh.
That's it.
Okay.
You don't have page
Okay.
Shin Nun Zayin, do you? What's the last word you have? The Yesh?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one line after that.
He's forbidden from the receiver.
They don't get killed for it, as they would for the other mitzvahs Bnei Noach. And the last one you have is 300.
Because they don't receive it?
No. Where's received?
Okay.
Oh, no. Assuming not Kabbalah, that it's a tradition. It's an oral
They
tradition.
received it from a tradition.
Right.
Oh, that's what it means. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking Kabbalah as in like Kabbalah mitzvah.
No. Kabbalah is a term that means.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for explaining.
Yeah. So now a Jew is allowed to give his animal to a non-Jew to crossbreed it. Forbidden. And then the Ramah adds to that, and likewise anything for a Jew to tell a non-Jew, even if it's just a prohibition of negative prohibition, is forbidden for a Jew to instruct a non-Jew to do it, unless the non-Jew is doing it for his own benefit. But something which is forbidden for a Jew to do, you can't instruct the non-Jew to do it. Yeah, so Amira L'Nachri Shavus applies to everything, they say.
What applies to everything?
Like on Shabbos. Just like you can't tell a guy what to do on Shabbos, so they say you can't tell a guy to do anything which is forbidden for a Jew to do. Then he brings down, but there are those that say that the reason why Bnei Noach is because Bnei Noach are commanded that they can't crossbreed or cross-graft.
You don't have to go into detail, Rabbi. I don't want to waste time, but is that for just things that are written in the Torah or things that are the rabbi said? Is there a difference?
Of telling a guy?
Yeah.
Probably only things which are biblically. I think. Okay, according to the Shach here in Yeridea, they're only forbidden to do these 7 and no more, and therefore he clearly says that it does not include crossbreeding or cross-grafting and anything else. He's very clear. He says it's only the 7. So that is it for now. He still brings down a few more things which are not part of the 7, which are to be discussed. So we'll save that for next time, which leaves us at the top of page Shin Nun Zayin 357.
How much more of that do we have to
It says there's still a bunch more, yeah.
All right.